It was a normal Christmas Eve in Worcester, a small town in South Africa tucked away between majestic mountains, just an hour drive northeast of Cape Town. Families were busy making their last-minute Christmas shopping at Shoprite, the most visited store of the area. For Juanita April, Sydney Jalal, and Sweetness Busakwe, it would be the last time they shopped there, and the last time they would be alive. In the horrendous aftermath of 2 bombs that went off, one inside the store and one several minutes later at the Narodum pharmacy across the street, over 70 other people were physically injured, and still many more were forever traumatized. All victims were either black or colored. Those who placed the bombs were 4 white supremacists who knew that almost no white person shopped at that busy and low-priced location and wanted to inflict the most race-based damage possible. They planted 2 other bombs in other public locations for a total of 4, but the other 2 thankfully did not detonate. As residents of the otherwise calm and quiet town dealt with the ramifications of that disturbing and tragic incident, they asked themselves many questions. First, why did it occur? And why did innocent kids have to die in this politically and racially motivated terrorist act? Were there any warning signs that such a sinister plan was in place? Aside from the 4 bombers, who should be held responsible? Who should compensate victims for their hospital bills? What is the responsibility of the municipality in such circumstances? What about the national government? Is Shoprite responsible for anything? Is there anything that could have been done to prevent it? What does justice dictate? The answers are neither easy to deal with, nor necessarily evident, but understanding the context and what happened in the aftermath can be a start. The year is 1996, and South Africa is a place undergoing much revolution, still in the process of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, headed by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Nelson Mandela is president, and there is much hope for the new democratic South Africa, but amidst these brims of sunlight coming in through the clouds, there is still anger, there is still pain, and there is still terrible violence. The African National Congress, ANC, has finally won the uncivil war against the race-based and authoritarian apartheid regime, but the peace is usually harder and takes a longer time to secure. Mandela's dream and plan of action was to strike the right balance between accounting for the racist and violent past, while at the same time allowing all citizens of South Africa, black, colored, Indian, and white, to feel like South Africa is their country. To achieve that balance, the TRC was supposed to allow families of dead victims of political violence to come forward with the testimony of their loss and encourage the perpetrators to tell the truth of what they did, who they killed, how they killed them, and what they did with the bodies. If the perpetrators told the truth at these TRC hearings, they would receive amnesty and never be liable for what they did, criminally or otherwise.
The Commission's first hearings were held here in the East London Town Hall, and it's been a week of raw emotion.
In return, the victims would get, in theory, closure, knowledge of where the bodies of their loved ones are, so that they can finally give them a proper burial, and earn $30,000 from a national government fund, the nominal equivalent of about $3,000. The practice of the TRC process, however, was very different. Perpetrators sometimes made up facts and told fake stories, and still received amnesty. Families of victims only had a 2-year window to report the loss of their loved ones, and many failed to do so for multiple different reasons. Many thought their loved one was still in exile in another country, just waiting for the opportune time to return. Some did not know about the time limit, and others in rural areas were even ignorant of the whole process itself. Many could not afford to travel to testify, or to take time off from their work to do so, especially those who lost their family's main breadwinner.
They were brutalized, they were savagely assaulted, and they were ultimately killed.
What was your role in the assault?
My role was to choke them, to strangle them.
Those who did testify sometimes were given $18,000, while the perpetrators walked away as free men. Some of the freed perpetrators then opened their own private security companies and actually further profited from their expertise in killing, while victims carried on with their scars and unmet promises of a better future.
Christmas nightmare in post-apartheid South Africa. Bombs were strategically placed to kill black and colored shoppers. 2 detonated, killing 4 and injuring another 67.
Peter John Felix was getting his van ready for his family to go on a vacation on that fateful Christmas Eve when he received a phone call from his mother. "Where is Bianca? Have you heard from Bianca?" She kept asking him, hysterically. "Bianca is not with me, why?" he answered, trying to calm her down. Peter's daughter, Bianca, had gone to Shoprite with her aunts earlier that day. "Peter, there was a bombing at Shoprite," she said. "Peter, there was a bombing at Shoprite." The distressed father immediately hung up and drove straight to the store. The scene he witnessed there was complete chaos. The police had already blocked off the store, but nothing was going to stop him from finding his daughter. He ran inside the store, slipped, and found himself on the floor. When he looked around, he realized the floor was covered in human body parts, which is what had caused him to slip. Eva Bartman Neethling also remembers the day very well. She was working as a cashier at Shoprite and had been working there for 4 years when the bombing occurred. Her contract, like many at the time and still today, was as a flexi employee, meaning that she did not get the benefits of full-time employees, even though she worked over 40 hours a week. Some minutes before the blast, she smelled a strong odor of ammonia emanating from one of the garbage bins in the store. The smell was getting stronger and stronger. Some workers reported it to their supervisors, but were asked to just return to their posts to cater to the lines of shoppers. Customers themselves were hurrying to get all their groceries and exit the store to escape the stench. Then the blast happened from that same garbage bin. Eva was paralyzed with fear. Just 3 days before, there had been an attempted robbery at the same store. Shoprite closed the store for just 2 hours when armed policemen arrested the robbers and inspected the store, and management then demanded employees reopen the store. When Eva stated that she was too scared to return to her cashier post for that day, Shoprite management threatened that she would lose her job if she didn't. So she returned to work, wiping off tears the rest of the afternoon while she totaled grocery bills. She was still in shock and facing the trauma of that day when the even more devastating tragedy occurred just 3 days later. Bianca was badly injured in the blast and was taken to the hospital, first to the public Eben Donges Hospital and then to the private Mediclinic. She would be in her hospital bed for days. Management then demanded employees reopen the store. When Eva stated that she was too scared to return to her cashier post for that day, Shoprite management threatened that she would lose her job if she didn't. So she returned to work, wiping off tears the rest of the afternoon while she totaled grocery bills. She was still in shock and facing the trauma of that day when the even more devastating tragedy occurred just 3 days later. In the following weeks, Peter called the President's office, the National Treasurer's office, and the Minister of Justice's office multiple times to inquire about the fund for Worcester victims. He also went to the National Government Information Desk in Cape Town, where he was treated to a nice lunch, but ultimately had to return to Worcester empty-handed. He received repeated assurances that the money was in place and that someone would get back to him about how to access it. Years have since passed, however, and no one ever did. Peter sold his house to pay his daughter's hospital bills and then sold 2 cars. His wife divorced him, not being able to cope with the pain and rift that the incident had caused in the family. Shoprite has refunded some shoppers for their grocery bill from that day. Esther Tani Nomazwi received a teddy bear. Fatima Omardian, who was a full-time checkout comptroller at the time, received a bouquet of flowers along with a note from Whitey Basan, the CEO, expressing best wishes for recovery. Lydia Busacqui received a Shoprite gift of sugar and tea for the funeral of her daughter Sweetness Busacqui, who was working at the store at the time. Management closed the store for the 2 holidays that followed the bombing and reopened on December 27th. There never was any management debriefing of the incident with employees, no attempt at offering any counseling sessions, and not even a mention of the incident. Management was only concerned with making up for lost business from the 24th. To my knowledge, Shoprite never paid any medical expenses for any customer, any full-time employee, and certainly nothing to any flexi employee. One victim who went to Shoprite's headquarters in Cape Town was turned away, with the explanation that Shoprite management were not the ones who planted the bomb in the store. The four bombers, Nicolaas Barnard, Abraham Myburgh, Johannes van der Westhuizen, and Stefaans Coetzee, were arrested shortly after the bombing and are still serving time in prison. Stefaans was 17 years old at the time, a member of the white supremacist group Afrikaner Weerstandsbeweging against the new government, and had a deep hatred of black people. Prison has since changed him and introduced him to a non-racist way of looking at the world, which he has now embraced. But he lives every day with the reality of what he did, and he has asked the survivors and victims for forgiveness.
All right, today marks exactly 30 years since Barend Strydom went on a killing spree in Pretoria. The then 23-year-old Strydom, dubbed Wit Wolf, killed 7 black people, injuring dozens others. Strydom claimed he was a Christian and had prayed for a number of days before committing the crime.
Sorry to have regrets would have implied I did something wrong. I did nothing wrong. If necessary, I would murder again, the words of the man known as the White Wolf in 1992. Barend Strydom showing no remorse after shooting 22 black people in a mass attack with a 9mm pistol. Strydom, a former police officer, went onto the streets of Pretoria at lunchtime in 1988. He shot every black person he saw in Strydom Square before he was overpowered by a security guard. 7 people died in that incident.
Barend, do you consider yourself a hero or a psychotic killer?
I'm a Boer freedom fighter and I'm a soldier for my country, my people and my religion.